Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I am your host, Mike Malatesta. On this podcast, I dig in deep with every guest to get to the roots of their success, to discover not just how it happened, but why it matters. My mission is to expose the ideas and clues you need to inspire, activate, and maximize the greatness in you. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the How Did It Happen podcast, powered by Winject Studios. I've got a great guest with me today, as I do every week, but and this guest has something in common with a good number of guests that I've had on the show, in that I have been introduced to this guest by my friend Justin Breen, who you've heard his name a few times around here. And every time Justin introduces me to someone, it turns out to be a fabulous connection. So Justin, thank you for that. And Henry DeVries, welcome to the podcast.
Well, Mike, that introduction, that's a lot of pressure, but I'll do the best I can.
Okay. Well, I like to set it up like that just to make you feel really nervous and feel like you have to perform at the highest level you've ever performed in your whole life. Henry, are you ready for that?
I was born ready, Mike.
Okay. All right. The other thing I do have in connection I have with Henry is Henry wrote a piece in his Forbes.com article about me and my book earlier this year, which I was very grateful for. So Henry, that's how after Justin connected us, that was the result of that. And then now we're going to hear more about Henry's story and less about mine. So let me get you excited about Henry. So Henry DeVries is the CEO and acquisitions editor. No, CEO and CEO, Chief Executive Officer, and CEO, Chief Encouragement Officer. Or do you just take the one? Can I give you both?
I just take the one, Chief Encouragement Officer and Acquisitions Editor.
Okay. Of Indie Books International, a company he co-founded in 2014. He works with independent consultants who want to attract more high-paying clients by marketing with a book and speech. As a speaker, he trains business development teams and business leaders on how to sell more services by persuading with a story. He is also the president of the New Client Marketing Institute, a training company he founded in 1999. He's the former president of Ad Age 500 advertising and PR agency, and has served as a marketing faculty member and assistant dean of continuing education at the University of California, San Diego. In the last 10 years, and this blows me away, Henry has helped ghostwrite, edit, and co-author more than 300 business books, including his McGraw-Hill bestseller, How to Close a Deal Like Warren Buffett, which is now in 5 languages, including Chinese, giving the Chinese all of our secrets. He has the monthly column with Forbes.com, as I mentioned, and he's got a bachelor's degree from UC San Diego and his MBA from San Diego State University. He's also done some work at little places like Harvard, that Harvard Business School, that kind of thing. So on a personal note, Henry is a baseball nut, a former Associated Press sports writer. He has visited, is this still right, 41 major league parks?
We're up to 43 out of 46. So
43 out of 46
before I touch them all.
Wonderful. Which are the 3 you have left?
Miami. And then because of the pandemic, the Toronto Blue Jays had to play in America for 2 years. So they played in Buffalo and a minor league park in Tampa. So those are on my hit list.
Oh, okay. So if a major league team has touched the park, you want to get there as well.
Well, they have to have it as their home. So I don't count one games. Like going down to Monterey for a weekend or going to Seattle. I'm sorry, going to Tokyo for a weekend. I'm not counting those in my official tally, but they have to have been headquartered there for a season.
Okay. Oh, wonderful. All right. Henry's hobby is writing comedy screenplays, and he hopes 1 or 2 or 10 will one day be made into films. You can reach and learn more about Henry at indiebooksintl.com. That's indie, INDIE, booksintl.com. LinkedIn, he's Henry J. DeVries. And of course, there's Forbes.com/sites/ his name, Henry DeVries, which is DEVRIES. Henry, thank you so much for being here. I start every show with the same question, and that is, how did it happen for you?
Well, Mike, after that introduction, I was afraid we'd be out of time.
Oh, well, yeah. You provided it.
let's go back in time.
Okay,
let's go back in time. The year is 2001, and I wish you could have been there when my business coach, Gary Hawk, said, let's go out to lunch. I want to hear about your exit strategy. So, finally, somebody wants to talk about my exit strategy. So I have the MBA, so I know what an exit strategy is. So I was so excited to have lunch. So we go to a place called P.F. Chang's Chinese restaurant, and Gary said, so what's the exit strategy? At the time, I was running my own marketing communications agency. I had been the president of someone else's agency, which I helped get into the Ad Age 500, which is the 500 biggest advertising agencies in America. And I found it was more lucrative to run my own lemonade stand of an agency than manage somebody else's agency that they own. So that was a learning. But I had this agency going, and I said, well, Gary, thank you so much for the question, because here's my vision. I'm going to grow this agency and have it running like a top until it's $1 million agency. Then I'm going to sell it to a strategic buyer. It'll take 10 years. So after the 10 years, when I sell it, then I will help independent consultants attract high-paying clients. It's scary for them. They don't know how to do it. They're afraid marketing is actually bad for them. I've cracked the code. I know how to do it. Gary said, wow, that was not the answer I expected. Do you mind if I ask you 3 follow-up questions? I said, go ahead. And he said, so how would you do this? And I said, well, I would write books on the subject. I would put on seminars. I would give workshops. People would invite me to give speeches. I would align with a university, and it would be someplace where my wife could also work, and it would have lots of trees and water. I believe it's in Oregon. Gary said, okay, wow, that's a pretty specific vision. And you seem very excited about this. I said, I am. He said, well, let me ask the next question. Why are you waiting 10 years to follow your passion? Ugh, Mike, I hate it when people like you ask a question like that. I mean, that's a gut check question. So I did what your clients do. I lied. I lied to Gary, and I said, well, Gary, it's because I have this group of employees. I have contracts with clients. I have a lease. I have a mortgage. I have a bank loan. I have all these things. I have a wolf at my door. Every morning to get into the agency, I have to, get past the wolf at my door. Okay. I didn't know it was a lie, Mike. It was my fear talking. My fear was talking, and it's that little 5-year-old voice in the back of your head, and it said all those things, and it came out of my mouth. Well, Gary knew it. He's a wise coach of CEO peer-to-peer groups, and he knew it, but he let me off the hook. And he goes, okay, I get it, wolf at the door. How would you get started in a small way? I said, a small way. Well, I would put on a lunch and learn at my office. I would, serve turkey sandwiches, and I would tell them everything I know about how to attract high-paying clients. So I took the last $2,000 in the business checking account, and I bought a list of consultants. I bought postage, invitations, and I had the money reserved for the turkey sandwiches. And my invitations were in the mail the week of 9/11, 2001. So when the jets hit the tower and the Pentagon, my invitations were at the post office. So I think we all remember what happened to business during those days. The top 10 agencies in San Diego experienced 5 of them going bankrupt. One agency owner who survived told me, though, we didn't write an invoice for 90 days. And the same thing happened to my little agency, and we almost went bankrupt. But a funny thing happened. At the end of the month, my conference room was filled with consultants who wanted a turkey sandwich and to hear what I had to say about business development. The extent of my intellectual property at the time was one sheet of paper with 29 bullet points. And I poured my heart out and I explained the 29 points in 90 minutes. And then I made the mistake, Mike, of saying, are there any questions? And somebody, yes, I have a question. I said, what's your question? It was, how much would you charge to coach us on how to implement these 29 steps? Well, Gary Hawk never asked me that question.
Hadn't thought of that. Okay.
I had no business model.
Yeah.
So I PFA'd, I pulled from air and said $5,000. And he said, do you take credit cards or can I write a check? The next month I said 6, then 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The number didn't matter. 2 things mattered. One, how much of the heavy lifting I was willing to do for them. And 2, their conviction. Well, it transformed the agency. I found a home for the employees. I found a home for the clients. And I took on this singular mission of helping independent consultants. And things were going great. And then one day my wife called a board meeting. Nothing, and with the note that said, we need to talk.
Okay. That kind of board meeting. Yeah.
Nothing in the history of business good ever happened after a note that said, we need to talk. So she sat me down and said, okay, you've had a good run. You've helped a lot of people. You've made a difference in their lives, but we've got nothing to show for it. And then she used a profanity, a 4-letter word. You need to get a job, AJOB. And I said, I'm unemployable. And she says, what are you talking about? You got an MBA, you've been to Harvard. I said, but I've been on my own for all these years. Nobody wants to hire somebody who's been on their own. Plus, I don't want to work for anybody. She said, okay, so no one would hire you. I said, no. She says, there's nobody you want to work for. I said, no. Nobody in the world. I said, no, nobody in the world. She said, you would work for the University of California at San Diego. Well, she had me there. That's my alma mater. I had taught there in the extension program for going on 15 years. I was the president of the Alumni Association. I said, okay, but the university just doesn't come find you and offer you a 6-figure salary. There's all these hoops and all things. Okay. So in California, we say that's challenging the universe. In the Midwest, they would say I was challenging God. I'm bilingual. I can speak both languages. I can speak Californian. I can speak Midwest. But
oh wow, that was quite a and your book's in 5 languages.
In 5 languages. So, now in Chinese.
Lots of talent. Yeah, so, that's
amazing. So funny thing happened. 30 days later, I get a note from the dean of continuing education at the university that says, we need to talk. I went, uh-oh. So I go into my meeting with the dean and she said, I've heard rumors that you're leaving us and going to the University of Oregon. And I said, Oh no, that's my vision speech. So I gave her the vision speech, water, trees, job for my wife. And she looked at me kind of like, a dog looks at you, like, ooh, and she goes, I don't get it. She said, you're already associated with one of the top 10 universities in the world. Everyone likes you, from the president up in Berkeley all the way down to the janitor here. So we're going to start you off with an academic administrative appointment. And your starting salary will be, and I said, wait a minute. Did a job interview happen? And now a salary negotiation is broken out? I missed something here. So I went to my CEO peer group and Gary, and I spelled it all out. And they said, this is a no-brainer. They said, essentially what they're doing is they're buying your business and taking it into the university. So first, you're going to offer them 3 days a week, and they're going to come back and they're going to want to tie you up, and they're going to offer you a contract. So whatever you do, hold out for only a 4-day work week. Then you can run your business the other 3 days of the week and cherry pick your clients. It's exactly what happened. And my wife found her job as the fiscal manager for one of the research departments. So she was their money fiscal HR person. Oh, by the way, the University of California, San Diego, where our offices are, is in a 1,200-acre forest that is on the Pacific Ocean. Trees, water. The whole vision came true. Just
you didn't have to go to Oregon.
I thought it was going to come true.
Yeah.
So somebody comes along and says, these 29 points, point 15 is write a book. I don't know how to write a book. You do. How much do you charge to ghostwrite a book? So I PFA'd, set a number, too low, but that was the first book. You're Not the Person I Hired. 10,000 copies go out there. And then all of a sudden, I'm getting a lot of calls from independent consultants saying, I'm asking around, and people say, oh, I know a guy. The guy is Henry DeVries. He can get you a bestseller. He'll train you how to speak. He'll open up all these doors for you. So that's going on while I'm the assistant dean and I'm teaching. So the side hustle is getting bigger than the job. And I go to the dean one day and I said, I love our work here. I love the university, but for some reason, I love these independent consultants more, and they need me. And I had a plaque on my wall, Mike. The plaque said, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And one day I said, and I was 55, and I went home to my wife and said, I want to talk to you about the next 10 years. She goes, uh-oh. I said,
you turn the tables
let me lay it out.
Yeah.
Remember when we got married and we said, would we retire at 55? And now we're both 55 and have these huge jobs at the university. She goes, yeah. I said, we'll never get to do all those things on the bucket list because we can't take the time off. They want to pay us for the time off, but not let us take the days. I said, let's both retire and take this business from side hustle. We'll blow it up. I don't even know what it's going to be, but it's going to be something special.
And that's when indie books came?
Yeah, that's when my wife looked at me and said, 10 years, make all those things happen in 5 years and you got a deal. So I resigned from the university. Oh, they thought I had, this is not a joke. They thought I had a nervous breakdown because I had to go into the senior HR person and read the policy manual aloud. I was one of the top leaders at the university and had a lifetime contract. In essence, I had tenure for 6 figures. I said, the only way I could be fired was for cheating with the chancellor's wife. I mean, it was like, and to their minds and they have a scarcity mentality at a university, that I would walk away with this. Meanwhile, I had already written the Warren Buffett book, and I've got an international bestseller, and a lot was coming from that. So I walked away and I started Indie Books. A person I knew well, Mark LeBlanc, who's also a best-selling author, said, I want to be a part of this. And I said, oh, well, how much do you want? He goes, half. I want half of it. He was doing the Eddie Murphy routine about divorce in California. I want half. I want half of it. I said, okay. I said, I don't know what the business is yet. He says, I don't care. Just whatever it is you're doing, I want half of it. And I said, what's our operating agreement? And he said, we only do things that we both agree. If either of us doesn't agree to it, then we find something we both agree to. So I'd always said, Mike, I am never going to have a partner. So to Mark, I said, well, I'm going to have to think about this because this is an important decision that affects the rest of my life. Okay, I'm in, partners. And we've married our fortune since, and it has been great. And there's never been anything that we couldn't come to an agreement on and do it. So,
and is it still a handshake type of thing? Like,
well, lawyers also get involved.
Oh, okay,
okay. A corporation. Oh, that's what I was telling you about. I never thought I'd have a day when I'd have a business attorney, an intellectual property attorney, a publicist, a set stylist, a video coach, speaking coaches. There's all these things that I had to do as I was learning on the way that, okay, to get this to be what I want. Also, you mentioned in my bio, so I wanted to be a screenwriter. And through my publishing, I published a book for a man who is the leading story consultant in Hollywood. His name is Michael Haig, and Michael's client list, Will Smith goes to him for all his movie projects, and people like Morgan Freeman and all this. So I told him about my dream. I've read all his books. I wanted to do screenwriting, and one day I wish I could afford him. And he said, "Didn't you see The Godfather?" I said, "Well, yeah, I saw The Godfather." He said, "Well, what's the key line from The Godfather?" And I said, "I don't know. What?" He goes, "I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse. So why don't you make me an offer?" And I said, "I'll give you a percentage of every movie I sell." And he said, "I'm in." So I'm working on 4 screenplays right now. I'm finishing the one that we think has the highest commercial appeal right now. So he said, "So what do you view what you're doing here?" I said, "Well, I think screenwriting is a great hobby." And he says, "Wrong answer." I go, I feel like a graduate student. I'm learning about this. It's like I'm getting my master's in screenwriting. Wrong answer. I said, "I'm a screenwriter." He said, "Right answer. It's the only job in Hollywood nobody has to give you permission to have. You just decide to be it." I said, "I haven't sold any of the screenplays." He goes, "Selling screenplays is not the definition of a screenwriter. A screenwriter is someone who writes screenplays and then pitches them."
That's really smart.
What you control.
Yeah. And it's what you tell yourself you are too. It's really important to tell yourself something that you are, right? Instead of something you're trying to be.
So I have a scrapbook, but the scrapbook is not for the past. It's for the future. And I look at my scrapbook every day, and there's photos and images, and it's what I want to become. So there's a section about the screenwriting. There's also a section about this mature business. We're 8 years into Indie Books. I've got over 150 authors that we've worked with. in that time. I have testimonials where people have said I've made them $1 million, several of those. So it's working. And Vicky, all those promises I made her, we did them all in 5 years. Except the last one is I've lost 100 pounds. I have 35 pounds to go. So everything else that was on that list that I would do if I couldn't fail, we've done. And I'm closing in on the last one.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
100 pounds. That's phenomenal. Although it may be the, down the line of phenomenal things that you've just shared in terms of what you've been able to accomplish, and how you set about accomplishing those things since 2001, which is where you started the story. Do you mind if I go back there?
Oh, let's go to anywhere.
Yeah, let's go back to 2001, and you're having this conversation with Gary. And one of the things you said was that, you were very specific about your vision, described it very specifically, had the time frame set out, and he challenged you with a question, which is why 10 years? And you came back with something that you sort of described as fear. And I'm wondering, because I think a lot of people are in the same shoes as you, where they are asked a question and they feel like they need to own the answer to that question. And so they have practiced I have ownership in quotations now. They've practiced their ownership of that answer, and they are ready to give it at a moment's notice. I know that question. I know how to answer it. But yet, and that comes off as confident, or can, but yet you described that there's something behind that, what I'm calling confidence, which was fear. And I'm wondering if you could dig into that a little bit to help us understand.
Fear never sleeps. Fear is always there. I was at a conference for business owners, and there were 20 of us around the table, and I brought up the fear topic. And everyone around that table, very successful people, or by any measure, people would say, those people are success. The woman who I would say was the financially most successful of all of us said every day she fears that it'll all go wrong and she'll end up as a bag lady. And we said, what evidence is there of that? But the fear's there. I had a rough patch in about 2006. I was ahead of the curve. While everybody had to wait to 2007, 2008 for the recession, it hit me in 2006 when I had 25 contracts and 25 different people all said, we can't honor our contract. And there were all different reasons. But all of a sudden, I thought, hey, 25. Now all of a sudden, 0 people say money's coming in. And one of my authors was a high performance coach for CEOs. Worked for people like American Airlines and Timex.
Sure.
And so he said, okay, let's go have breakfast tomorrow. So we go have breakfast, and I had fear on my face, obviously. And he said, okay. He said, there's going to be a trial, a court trial, and you're going to be on the witness stand. And they're going to ask you, can you make, or have you made $100,000 a year? And what will your answer be? I'll say, yes. How many years have you done that? 20. What evidence can you provide us that you did that for 20 years? So, yeah. He goes, okay. So why do you think you can't do it for 20 more? I said, I don't know. And he goes, well, let me help you. I'm going to buy your business today. I'm going to buy it. We're going to come to a price, and I'm writing you a check. I bought your business. Now, the first act as the owner is I'm firing you as president. I said, okay. And he goes, now I need a president to run it. I'd like you to apply. I said, okay. He goes, if I'm a very demanding boss, what 6 things are you going to do this week? And I ticked off things about business development and offering clients more services and all that. We wrote it down. He said, great, let's have breakfast next week. So next week we had breakfast, and he goes, how did you do on those 6 things? And I gave a progress report. He said, great. What 6 things are you going to do this week? And I told him. He said, okay, you can keep your job. I'll have breakfast with you next week. And this went on. And I found out it came out to be about the same 6 things every week. And he says, we don't need to have breakfast anymore. Just keep doing those 6 things. And, the business will take care of itself. But the fear never sleeps, Mike. It's always there. So those pat answers we have, how's business going? Great. How's revenue? Unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. And you're so trained that that's what you have to say, right? That's how you fit in at these meetings, whether it's whatever kind of meeting you're at. I actually had I tackled that in my book because I was in that same situation where on the outside, most people looking at me would be like, wow, that, things are going well. And some parts were going well, but inside of me, I was so it was so challenging for me to be, justifying my own existence. And not in a like a suicidal way or anything, but just like my position, justifying why, not only why am I here, but where am I supposed to go from now? Right. And it's just so easy to sometimes get into situations where you just like, how long can I keep this up? Because I really don't know what else to do except keep this up. Right. And it's just, yeah.
Just keep going.
These 29 things that you came up with as a result of that conversation, what were these just things that you had learned or developed throughout your career that you just started writing down? I mean, I'm trying to imagine this meeting, you send out this letter to these consultants and you say, hey, come for a turkey sandwich. And you show them your 29 things. What's so compelling about the 29 things, or what did you expect to have happen from that meeting? Like, where'd they come from? What did you expect?
Yeah. It was in San Diego. So it was a San Diego mailing list of consultants. Right. And I really didn't know. I was just going on the faith in Gary and his questions. And I'd also read Think and Grow Rich 40 times by Napoleon Hill. So when he said, how would you start in a small way? That's a question in that book. You start right now with whatever you have. So I thought, what do I have? I have an office. I have a conference room. I have a conference table. It seats 12. So we'll send this out. Not knowing that this wasn't going to be a sideline. This would totally take over the business.
And you weren't doing it to sell anything. It sounded like from it, you were doing it to really connect with people and provide some type of value that you thought. And all of a sudden, the person raises their hand and says, well, hey, Henry, how much would you charge to coach us on this? That just was a byproduct you weren't expecting, right? You were just sort of expecting that. Yeah. Okay.
Well, in California, we'd say the universe manifested.
Yeah. So the secret, it was
Midwest,
the secret.
God helps those who help themselves. So I did that. And then people started lining up to pay money. So meanwhile, there's something about law of attraction and intent and writing down and speaking aloud what you want and being specific. Going back to the OG, Norman Vincent Peale and the power of positive thinking. You can go to Wallace Wattles, The Science of Getting Rich. All of these are saying a same message about being very concrete in the vision, but also being open that it'll happen a little different than you think. I'm sure with your companies that you were building and As I was reading about in the industry, you didn't have all the answers. You didn't even know all the questions when you started a lot of that. You had to think about it. You're a bit of a contrarian. I like that about you, in that you just didn't be a sheep in business and do what everyone else was doing. You were challenging people with awkward, difficult conversations. But it was for the good of the order, as we used to say.
Right.
Yeah, so it was for the good of the order. So you weren't in a mean place. So anyway.
Yeah, I think, and that's interesting what you say about the secret or manifesting the universe or whatever, juxtaposed against, how would you start in a small way? Because I think some of the things that people get messed up on is they hear that kind of stuff, manifest the universe, or, get your message out there and it'll come. But they forget the part about, hey, that's great to get it out there, but if you don't start making some small step in the direction you want to go in, no one's going to care.
Right.
You have to sort of back it up, right? You have to sort of take action, like you've taken action. It was, yeah. Hey, Henry, when your wife had this board meeting with you, this We Need to Talk meeting, you said that she said, we have nothing to show for it. And that struck me, because you were saying, these people were offering to pay you this much and then this much, and this thing was just sort of taking off on its own. But what was happening because it sounded like that was, I don't know what she meant by that. We have nothing to show for it.
Sure. Oh, no, I'll tell you. We made millions and spent millions.
Okay.
And then I learned a secret from a business coach was, what you don't spend, you get to keep. Do you want the really bad version of the story?
Sure. Give us the really bad one.
Okay, so I always say that the best day, I always say the worst day working for yourself is better than the best day working for someone else. So the worst day was March 10th, 2012. And that's when I got to talk to the federal prosecutor and the IRS auditing chief, who said, "Mr. DeVries, we believe you have been a victim." Now, there's three things you don't want to hear in life. One is there's a 60 Minutes news crew waiting in the lobby to talk to you. Mm-hmm. You don't want to hear, "Oh, the neighbors called. They're reporting a strange odor emanating from underneath your house." And then the third thing is you don't want to have the federal government tell you you've been a victim. They let me read a 42-page indictment against my tax attorney and CPA. And it detailed all of the things that they had done to cheat the government out of millions, and their clients. And I was probably the smallest fish in the net. And they said, "So, Mr. DeVries, we feel you've been a victim, so we're going to charge you the statutory minimum. You'll only have to pay the IRS $75,000. And, I mentioned I lost all that weight. I was an emotional eater. It's scary being overweight. I went to a therapist, and she said, "Well, do you think you're an emotional eater?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know. Let me eat on that and get back to you." So I was an emotional eater. So that's how the fear came out. I don't drink or use drugs or anything, but my doctor said, "You've had your lifetime supply of donuts. You need to let other people have donuts now." So they told me I'd been a victim, and if I had a question about the 75,000, and I said, "Well, if you're letting me off light with $75,000, what would bad have been?" And the prosecutor said, "Mr. DeVries, if we thought you were part of this conspiracy, we would put you away in a federal penitentiary for 7 years. Do you have any other questions?" And I said, "Yeah, do you guys have any donuts around here? Because I need to think about this." So that debt, other debt, um, over, I think it was $275,000 in debt at that time. And I think that was part of what the wife was saying, it's like,
Okay.
So why don't you just get a steady job and we'll get a pension and, so I'm happy to say today I am totally debt free except for my mortgage. I'm debt free. We've got money in the bank. We did all those things, but there was a turning point. And she said, you don't have to start up this business and do all this. It's okay. We'll just, slow and steady pay off all that debt, and we'll get to retirement. And and I said, yeah, no, that's not what I choose. I heard a radio preacher once, and he was talking about, men, you like adventure and you like excitement. Your wives like stability. Your wives like, they like security.
Right.
And I looked at my wife. We were in a cab, and I said, I am so sorry. She says, now we're on the ride together. And she didn't mean the cab ride. She said, we might not make it, but we have made it. And I have no plans of retiring. I turned 65 this month. I'm on Medicare now. That was great. That saves a few $100s a month. But the plan is to keep doing this because my mission is to help God's other children with what I know best, and that's how to market with a book and a speech.
So, I'm glad you're not retiring. I'm still in my 50s. I'm on the latter side of my 50s, but I just can't see it. Like if you're fortunate enough to have an opportunity where you could retire financially, for example.
Yeah.
I think it's more helpful and healthy to instead of retiring, just choose what you want to do more selectively. Right. So I call it options, not obligations. Choose more selectively and keep doing it, because you've got so much. Everyone that's fortunate enough to be in that position has so much to continue to offer to people that's valuable, that if you put yourself on the sidelines, you first of all, you start to kind of rot, but your value starts to rot too. And then all of a sudden you become an emotional rotter instead of an emotional eater. It's just kind of spiraled down.
Oh yeah, it'll kill you. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it many times. So when I was in my 50s, Mike, one of my authors, I've been blessed that I get to help and I get advice from these amazing people who other people pay a lot of money for their advice. And because I'm interviewing them and pulling it out, I get it for free. And he just had me sit down and write a T, like we do debits and credits, but it was on one side, I was to write everything that I didn't like about being the president of a company. And on the other side of the ledger, I was to write everything I did like. And he said, okay, now what you do is you systematically get rid of everything on the don't like list. And you keep everything on the like list. And now you're retired, because you'll never work a day in your life if you don't have to do those things you hate.
Yeah.
Now, every once in a while, do I have to go talk to a banker? Yes. Do I have to discipline an employee? Yeah. There are things that crop up on that list, but it's not the regular part of my life. I'm pursuing these things that I like doing, and finding somebody who likes those things on that bad side of the list. Accounting. Yeah, I have an MBA. I can be the accountant here, but that doesn't spark joy in me. But I have people who are like, oh, I get to be the accountant? You mean I get to do all the numbers and do your taxes and all that? Can I? Yes, you may. Okay.
Yeah. And if you're familiar with strategic coach program, they call that unique ability, right? So everyone's got a unique ability, that something that energizes them, and like that's the key, right? If you want to be free, then get rid of all the things that don't energize you and but have to be done, and find someone who gets a ton of energy from that. And then it's just a win-win for everyone.
When I studied this business, one of the models was strategic coach. Read all his stuff. I wrote about him. Dan Sullivan.
Yeah.
The name right? Dan.
Dan.
Yeah. Dan. And the use of time and other things, very profound. And then Ken Blanchard of the Blanchard companies, the 1 Minute Manager. I started to write about him, and he's been a mentor to me, and was very generous in his time. So it comes back, and you said something nice about the business model here. We say the brand is generosity. So I speak pro bono every month. I do get paid to speak $5,000 to $10,000, but I waive that for certain groups, and I'm happy to help them. And I'm happy to do one-on-one. I'll offer it to any of your listeners or viewers that if they want to have a strategic phone call with me, not a selling call, but a strategic phone call about books and book publishing, or promoting a book they already have, or a book that they could write, I'll do that at no charge for them. Just contact me through the website. The only catch is there's only so many spots a month, and they get filled up. So you might have to wait a month or something to get on the calendar. But helping people was a big one on that right side of the list. So that's the brand. The brand is generosity.
So that's a wonderful brand, by the way.
Thank you.
And can I ask you, besides what you just offered, which, by the way, thank you for that. I'll make sure that gets into the show notes.
You can ask me anything. I told you about I had troubles with the IRS.
Yeah. Yeah.
I totally vetted those people, by the way.
Oh yeah. So what did they not file your taxes, or what did they do that impacted you, that you had to pay the fees?
Well, they had advice on setting up two corporations, and then certain expenses went through one corporation and the other. And I ran it by another attorney at the time. I ran it by a former IRS employee auditor, and when we started, it checked out. But as they got growing, they did other things with the business, and then started charging us money and also taking money out of our account that we didn't know. So it all totaled up. I overheard somebody in a sushi bar talking about it, and it cost him $800,000. And I think he lost his house. He said he almost lost his marriage. That was Mike, if I can share this is important. So whenever I tell stories about my wife, everybody thinks she's going to be like a battle axe or something. And it's just the opposite. But I had to go to her when I realized I had made this horrible mistake. And, I created this business. I got everybody into it. I did this. And I told her about this and all of it. And she looked at me and she says, "How did we ever trust these people?" And the voice in my head said, "She said we." She said we. And I would, I've always told her, "You're part owner of this." I would tell her things that were going on. But, she has a bookkeeping, accountant, HR kind of background. So she would just listen. But at this point, she said, I suspected something about them. I told you. And I said, "I know, it was too late." She goes, "You rely on me to be a judge of character. I should have been a better judge of character of these people. I should have known it earlier." And I said, "Let's not beat ourselves up. It happened. Now we're just going to get out of this." That's the path.
My wife Jamie is similar. I think she has a better sense of people than I do, but I just try to convince myself that whatever she's telling me, if I don't agree with it, I just convince myself that whatever the deficiency might be, I can make it right. But she's more often than not the one who's sort of nailed it, and it comes out later. Like maybe maybe not the same way that yours did, but this, it comes out later when the truth is revealed, I guess. So you've shared a lot of stories with us, and your whole, you say it's about generosity, but it's also about telling stories. I think you've recognized a long time ago that there's power in being able to tell a good story that has value to people. And when people come to write a book with you, and I did not write my book with Henry, and and so I have my sort of like why I did it, and I want to leave that sort of off to the side, because I would love to get your wisdom and your expertise on like, why should someone write a book, and what should, if there is a should, what should be the motivation, what should be the goal? Why?
Thanks for asking. Great question. There are several reasons why people write books. So one, let's just take it as a client attraction tool. And I say the book is the number one marketing tool for a consultant, and talking about the book is the number one sales strategy. So by my generosity today, I hope to be rewarded by somebody coming forward and saying, I want to talk to you about a book. Speaking on podcasts is how I helped a brigadier general from the US Army write his book, and how I helped a Harvard Business School professor write his book. They found me by listening to a podcast. Okay. And the same thing I teach on how to do speeches and small scale seminars based on your book, and this attracts people. That's one. Two is you're a CEO or business founder, or leader who wants to create a culture. So you capture the stories around the core values of your business, because human brains are hardwired for stories. And if we use the Hollywood storytelling techniques, our people are going to retain the story and be able to tell the story to somebody they train, somebody they're recruiting. So the culture gets reinforced through the storytelling of the core values or the basic principles, your tenets, what we believe, what makes this business this business. Another reason will be it's a legacy. A CEO, founder, leader has gathered wisdom through the years, and they want to have that wisdom recorded and put down so others can have it. When I was 25, I worked with Ray Kroc. Ray Kroc was the founder of McDonald's. He also owned the San Diego Padres. At 25, I was a marketing consultant to the San Diego Padres. I wrote their first marketing plan. I asked one of the VPs about, who do you see as the competition? And he said, the Giants are really tough this year, but we can't count out the Dodgers ever. The Dodgers are tough. And I said, I'm sorry, I asked the question wrong. Do you think it's the movies? Do you think it's plays? Do you think it's the beach? Do you think it's picnics? If I'm going to spend an afternoon or an evening with my family, what are my other choices? And I thought their heads were going to explode. What do you mean? I go like, people have dollars and they go, my dollars, I'm going to spend on something for entertainment.
Yeah.
That competition. So I brought him through and helped him crack the 1 million mark on attendance. But what I got was through working with Ray Kroc, and I was there on his 80th birthday. We threw a celebration. Actually, Coca-Cola came to me and said, we want you to throw a celebration for Ray because Coca-Cola would not be in front of Pepsi if it wasn't for Ray and McDonald's, his fierce loyalty. So I want to give you a blank check. You've heard about a blank check, He says, I want to give you a blank check to put on this celebration. I said, okay, what do you mean a blank check? And he said, didn't you just hear that Coke leads Pepsi because of Ray? Coca-Cola is offering you a blank check. So I spent millions on the event, and I was with Ray, and I was touring him around before the game in this tent with all his franchise owners, people who used to be like a fry cook in Fresno. And Ray said, you're going to own the new franchise here, writing a deal on the back of a hamburger wrapper. So he made these people millionaires. But when I started to work for Ray, and I was to call him Ray, he gave me a copy of his book, Grinding It Out. And I learned all about the culture, the philosophy, everything about McDonald's and the Ray Kroc way of doing business. He didn't have time to spend 6 hours with me, but I took 6 hours and read the book and knew so much. So that's one of the reasons people will write a book. Bill Gates, he didn't write the books, but somebody wrote the books for him. But he wrote those books to position the brand in the marketplace. So it wasn't so much for lead generation for Microsoft, but he wanted to be seen as a thought leader in the technology space. The same reason Jack Welch didn't write it, had somebody else write it at GE, to position the brand at GE through these books. So these are the different reasons people write books.
And do you encourage everyone to write a book, or do you? Because I've heard people say, yeah, everybody should write a book. Everybody's got a story that's worth telling, that kind of thing.
Well, I'll quote Warren Buffett. Don't ask a barber if you need a haircut. So don't ask a ghostwriter and a book publisher if you need a book, because I got the answer for you.
The answer is affirmative. I bet the capital Y.
Yeah. So I want to be the Steve Jobs of consultant books, where everybody who's a consultant can have an affordable book that positions their knowledge and wisdom and expertise. So that's what I believe. And then every book needs to have stories. Human brains are hardwired for stories. I'll never forget the time I gave my Persuade with a Story workshop in downtown LA. The year's 2015. We're in a high rise. We're in the penthouse offices. I give a workshop for a group of CEOs on how they can persuade with a story. And the managing partner invites me back after the presentation to his inner office, his sanctum sanctorium. Let's call him Bernie the attorney. So Bernie the attorney says, Henry, you see all these movie props and posters? And that was what his office was decorated. And I said, yeah. He goes, yeah, Grandpa was a famous Hollywood producer in the 20s and 30s, and Dad was a famous producer in the 40s and 50s. I went into entertainment law, but you solved a mystery for me today. I said, Bernie, what mystery did I solve? He said, Grandpa used to say there are only 8 movies we make in Hollywood. And I never knew what he meant until today. Because one of the secrets I teach on storytelling is there are really only 8 stories you tell. It's an overcoming a monster story. There's a Cinderella rags to riches, David versus Goliath story. There's a comedy solution and a tragedy solution. Comedy is a wacky idea. All's well that ends well, comedy of errors, it works out well. And then a tragedy, these are cautionary tales about somebody tried to take a shortcut. Like, oh, I'm a school teacher and I have stage 4 cancer and I have no retirement money for my family. I know, I'll make meth in an RV in New Mexico. What could possibly go wrong? Breaking Bad.
Right.
But The Big Short is that story. So is Too Big to Fail, Barbarians at the Gate. All these business books are these stories. There's the mystery story, The Quest for a Prize, How to Close a Deal Like Warren Buffett is a quest book. Because it's not how to be like Warren Buffett, the investor, how to be like Warren Buffett, the deal maker. And how does Warren Buffett get companies to take 20% less than other people are offering to be bought by Berkshire Hathaway? So that's in the book. He has principles and ways of doing it. And then there's a rebirth, comeback, redemption story. And then there's an escape from crazy town story where everything's going well and then things jump the tracks and then you have to get back on track. You would know it as Alice in Wonderland or The Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
In business, I wrote a book called The Prodigal Executive, and it's how this Dr. Bruce Heller is brought in by boards of directors when the president or the chief technology officer is too valuable to let go, but too painful to keep. There's a bloody wake of bodies behind these people. So Bruce Heller gets to come in and says to the CEO, I've got hard news and good news. He goes, what's the hard news? The board's brought me in. I'm your last chance. If it doesn't work out with me, you're gone. What's the good news? I'm very expensive. They spent a lot of money to save you.
To save you. Oh, yeah. Okay.
And he said, 8 out of 10, he saves. I said, what happens to the other 2? Well, one was sending a message, subconsciously, or a Freudian message or whatever you want to say, that they didn't want to be there anymore. And they actually wanted to be thrown out. So he said, for those people, we just find them a landing spot and bring in the right person. I said, what about the 10th? He goes, too proud to accept coaching, won't accept coaching. So it ends badly. So I teach people those 8 stories. I teach them how to tell the story in under 2 minutes. You're not like a grandpa telling stories all the time. They're very strategic when you bring them into conversations. And I teach authors, the stories need to be in your book because your defining stories are your hidden asset. I didn't share stories today from Aesop's fables or what happened to somebody else. These are my defining stories. I've honed them. You knew that this was not the first time I'm talking about the IRS audit.
That's
or
right.
The first time I'm talking about the Chinese restaurant and Gary Hawk challenging me. So you need to practice the stories also. So you need a quiver of stories, you need to practice them, and you need to tell them at strategic times.
Well, Henry, that's fantastic advice to end on. I think, thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm grateful to have learned from you today. And of course, I'm grateful that you helped me with your column. Congratulations on the weight loss, the 30 pounds you have to go. I'm quite sure that that'll happen because you've already taken the steps and you're on the path and you know what to do. I'm glad you got free of the IRS because, we wouldn't be talking if they had found that you had contributed and gone the other way. Right.
Well, I didn't want to gloss over that. So at one moment in my life, I had hired these people to keep me out of trouble. And I'm being informed that I could go to prison. And because they had also wiped me out of money at that time, I'm in debt. I didn't have money to hire attorneys to keep me out of prison. So,
right.
Yeah, I would have been I guess I could have done a 7-year research project.
Yeah, I guess you could have. And you probably would have come out of it better, but I'm glad you didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
And thanks for the offer too, for people to connect with you. Again, I will put that in the show notes and it's just been a real joy talking to you. Thank you so much.
Mike, may I make one more offer?
Oh yes, go for it.
Okay, so if it's one of your people and they're listening and they go, how do I get him to write about me in Forbes?
Yeah.
You don't have a Justin Breen in your life to make the introduction. Well, any of your listeners can send that email. And if you can put Henry at indiebooks.intl.com in the show notes. But all you have to do is send me an email that says Forbes in the subject line. That's all. I will send you back instructions on how to pitch me for the story. And if we do the story, how to do it. As Mike can attest, it's a very organized process. It's not loosey goosey. We have a way of doing it. And Mike, I invite you to contact me again this year. I think you've got more than one story in you that's Forbes worthy.
Oh, well, thank you. I will do that because I would love to have another. I would love to explore that. Thank you so much, Henry.
As they say at Chick-fil-A, my pleasure.
My pleasure. I love that too.
Which is better than no worries or no problem.
No problem.
Gotcha.
No problem.
What happened to you're welcome? So I don't know, but at least at Chick-fil-A, it morphed into my pleasure.
Yeah, that's very smart of them too, by the way. It's very memorable.
Right.
Well,
it's part of their brand.
This has been my pleasure, Henry. Thank you so much.